where did it start? It started with a guy called Charles Sieber. He was the guest inventor of East London University, a wood expert, amazing guy he was. And I was rubbing down a piece of wood one day. No, I was on an M11 campaign, that was it, and he was building a tower. And the structure he was doing was really unusual, and I got involved in working on it with him. And then I was preparing this bit of wood to make something, and I was starting to fill a hole and a crack in it. And he went, "Why are you filling the hole and the crack?" I said, "Well, to make it look nice." He went, "No, you're ruining the hole and the crack." He said, "Why don't you leave the hole and the crack?" And it was that first got my interest in wood. He was the person that got my interest in old wood and the different things that you could do, like river tables and all kinds of other amazing pieces of wood that would have an art form naturally, or something that people wanted to create them into. That's where it began. It began on a campaign years ago on the M11.
The M11 is a motorway. What was the campaign?
Claremont Road. It was an anti-motorway campaign.
So you were a young person involved in...
Believe it or not, I was once, yeah. Well, that ain't that long ago. You know, that was in the 80s, in the late 80s. And there was people from there went on to go onto the roofs of the Houses of Parliament to campaign against the motorways. It was powerful. It was a very active kind of time. But for me, going on to the campaign, I came out of it doing wood recycling. That was what I gained out of the campaigning, was the wood recycling. I started off from a squat that I was living in Victoria Road in Hackney, and I kept seeing really interesting wooden skips, kept pulling it out, taking it home, pulling it out, taking it home.
So it came from a protest movement. Then you were scavenging the wood and reclaiming it and making things. Is it an art form that you're doing, or is it just a useful trade?
Well, it's kind of both. The art form it just became more and more apparent as time went on, because I was a carpenter initially. I was a person that put floorboards down and hung doors and all this sort of thing.
So you had the technical skills from that work with wood?
Yeah.
You knew about wood?
I knew about wood, yeah. But it then went on to be in an art form, really. And then that's where I met my business partner, Suraiya. She worked up the road there in a community place called the Bow Centre. I got commissioned to make a totem pole for a new block of flats that was being built in Chatham Docks. And what I was asked to do was a totem pole starting off at the top with a boat and a barrel, because it was the docks. And I asked them at the community centre up the road if I could do the carving up there, so I could involve community people. And this is where I met my now business partner, Suraiya. And she was the first one that come along and said, "Give me some chisels, let me do some carving."
So Suraiya, who's in our line of sight, she's in the office on the computer, keeping the business running. She just came up to you and said, "I want to pick up a chisel, I want to see what I can do with this wood."
I've heard what you're doing here, she said, from other people within the community of the community centre, and I'm an artist and I'd like to do some carving. Have you got some chisels? And I'll do some carving. Then the art side of things became really apparent then. Before that I was still a carpenter, messing around with natural bits of wood and things, you know, whatever I was kind of scavenging. And
so it's been a natural process how this has all evolved.
Yeah.
Things have just happened.
Yeah.
Or did you make them happen?
I kind of made them happen. There was a project in Brighton called the Brighton and Hove Wood Recycling Project, and I used to go down to there once a week, take down a small lorry with a tipping body on it and a chainsaw, and do massive things down there. On the one day that I was there with up to 10 volunteers that were working for that project, that were doing everything by hand. So I had an insight to what is possible in doing recycled wood from there.
But you weren't tempted to stay down there, that side? You weren't tempted to move to Brighton? And
no, I had family here, 2 young sons. I was separated in my relationship, and there was no chance of commuting every weekend from down, so I had to stay local around here so that I could see them every week.
You've mentioned chainsaws and chisels. The animals that are around us in this work shed that we're sitting in Some have the marks of a chainsaw, some might not. I'm not an expert at these things. Do you prefer to work with one or other tool?
No, no, it doesn't make any difference. You're achieving an end, and so you use whatever tools are required in order to achieve that.
You've got a piece of wood in front of you. It's unformed. I remember watching a TV programme years ago when I was a kid about a stone sculptor, and he said he sat and he looked at the block of stone for sometimes weeks before something came to him.
Yep.
What do you do when you're looking at a raw piece of wood that's been dragged out the river or been reclaimed somewhere? How do the ideas come to you? How do you see the form that might come out of it?
Me, personally, I'm a bit of a yeti when it comes to that. I either leave it exactly as it is or cut it up and turn it into firewood. The person who sees things in it is the artist, is Suraiya.
And Suraiya's just coming over to point at a message on a phone.
That's incredible. That's amazing.
Well,
I was cutting up.
Tell us what that's incredible.
She just said talk about the mama and the papa monster. I was down in Kent on an environmental project, and I was just about to cut some wood into firewood, and she's gone, no, don't cut that up. That's Papa Monster. I thought, what? She said, that's Papa Monster. And what it looked like a sea lion standing on its front flippers with a male organ sort of hanging at the rear end. And she went, no, don't cut that up. She said, I want to make So anyway, I didn't cut that up. And then there was another piece of wood that she said, oh, look, that one's Mama Monster. And then she went on to take the Mama Monster and then make underneath in the belly of it, do a cutout. She'd done it with a sandblasted out a hollow and a space around it and made a baby underneath Mama Monster.
So all this was in Suraiya's head. This was her vision.
Yeah.
And when she explained it to you, were you just like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I can't see it.
When an architect came in that was doing an exhibition in Regent's Park and asked us if we would take that to Regent's Park for a 3-month period and allow it to be exhibited in Regent's Park. But as I'm setting it up and there's the public are coming round and looking at it and going, wow, and that was down there on this little garden up until quite recently when it rotted away and fell apart. From then on, I really appreciated the things that she would see in wood. Like I said, I'm the yeti. I don't see these things. I can use the chainsaw, I can do the lifting, but the person with the eye for the art is sitting in there in the office on the computer. And it's the same with all these carving. She's in charge of all of this. If you were here for long enough and you didn't have that microphone in your hand and she was carving, she'd have chisels in her hand and she'd have you carving. So it's a communal effort to do the carvings because she gets everyone doing it.
You've mentioned community. Going back to the M11 protest that started you off on all this and where you are now, have you lost that fire of change and community action, or do you still feel as strongly now as you did back then?
Oh, every bit as strongly now as I did then. I've been involved in change and creation in major things along the way. One of those changes in major things is a place in Market Drayton called Fordall Farm. That's won an award for being the most successful community project in Europe. Old Arthur, he was the pioneer organic farmer of this country. And they were facing eviction when I first heard about him. I was in Kingston College doing a degree in permaculture and sustainable development when a tutor called Andy Langford said to me, there's this project in Market Drayton, it's about to get evicted, it's really interesting, you should go up there if you get the opportunity, especially you, Danny. Anyway, next week I was up there and I never went back to finish the course, but my passion for environmental stuff has not gone away at all. I'm now involved with somewhere down in Wales, which is a forest school in its infancy. And if a campaigner was to come in and needed help with something or support with something, they get it from me straight away. So,
you said you never went back to that course in Kingston, having been to the Market Drayton farm.
Yeah.
That sounds quite impulsive. Are you an impulsive person who's like, right, I'm changing direction without warning?
I'm hands-on. If you give me a problem that's in front of me, I won't write a detail about what should be done. I will just physically get involved and make it happen.
Is it like a head and a heart thing? Do you just always go with your heart? This feels right. I'll do this thing. Or do you sometimes like double check yourself? Like you mentioned, like with Brighton, you're like, practically I can't do this because I've got family commitments and you know, there's things I can do and there's things I can't do.
But one day a week I'd move mountains. One day a week I'd move mountains. I would do more in that one day than I would do ordinarily in the rest of the week. I should do more in that one day. So I will act, but I will certainly make the most of it, you know, wherever I can. And about 4, maybe 5 years ago, I was publicly thanked by the Mayoress of Brighton for having been volunteer number 1 in the Brighton and Hove Wood Recycling Project and making it into what it is today. And now there's 45, 47 other projects that model themselves on the Brighton and Hove Wood Recycling Project for recycling materials in their town, their city, all over the country.
So you're a fire starter?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a hellraiser, I'm a fire starter, yeah.
And it's interesting what you say about the one day a week moving mountains. It's almost like a philosophy. It's like if you just really go for it in a concentrated way, that's as effective as giving it 5 days.
That's my way of doing it. There's lots of people that can't do that. There's lots of people that need that daily routine of daily doing a bit more, and they're the ones who make it. I'm the impulsive nutcase that will turn up on the one day, overload the lorry beyond belief, take every kind of danger with the chainsaw in order to cut this bit out, get that bit out, whatever. I'm that nutcase. I'm that impulsive one day a weeker. At the end of the day, we're creatures of comfort, you know, so I'll do all that madness on one day, and then the rest of the days I'm much quieter, I'm much more relaxed. It's like helping out the people that really do the work. And that's what used to drive me, was the others that were in there.
So people have got to be involved. You can move mountains, but you don't want to do it on your own.
That's absolutely right, yeah. Yeah. It's a form of showing off.
Is that something that goes back to childhood? Do you remember like being like that as a kid too?
I grew up on a little farm in the southwest of Ireland where the donkey and cart drew the stones to make the road so the tractors didn't get stuck, you know, and I was there for that. You know, if you needed a hole digging, you didn't go, where's the mini digger? You went, where's the pick and shovel? So everything was hands-on when I was a kid.
So that like hard graft as a nipper kind of formed you, or kind of put a foundation in?
It's my medicine, yeah. I need it every now and then. I need 1 day a week's enough. 7 days a week kill you.
And Suraiya, your business partner, who's sitting near us in the office, what does she think of your moving mountain day? Is it annoying, or is she the one who's like, go and do your moving mountain day?
Both. There's times when it needs doing, and then there's times where she wished that I would just slow down a bit. That fair?
What was the question?
All right. Can you start to join us? Because this is as much about you as it is me.
What is the question?
So I'll walk over to you. The question. Danny was saying that he has his moving. I've just moved inside the office now. He has his moving mountains days where he does a lot of things in one day, and he has to throw everything at it. And I was saying, you as the business partner, is it difficult when he does that, or do you encourage him to have those kind of like incredibly energetic days?
It's kind of both. Have to run business, and sometimes clients demand to do all everything speedy. Sometimes I let him to do what he like to do. Don't pressurize.
Because he's been singing your praises as basically the artistic engine, the vision person.
It will not possible without him anything to do with big pieces of tree trunk. So he is the main one, strongest hand.
And in terms of similarities between you run a business together. Does the business work well because you are different?
So he is specialized for wood, tree, trunk, recycling, timbers, and my background fine art and design, so we work together. It's kind of 50-50.
Danny, just going back to that, the involvement of other people. This is a business. We're in a large shed with lots of pieces of formed and unformed woods, carved animals, but there's also a lot of wood stacked up around us. Can you explain what this business is? Who pays you? What is the business?
Well, it's a business of selling wood, making end products, and whatever gets paid or whatever money is earned from the wood or from making products. We don't have any funding from anywhere. Everything is all self-supporting.
We're off the edge of a busy motorway down a side road. How do people find out about you? Who comes to you? Who brings work to you?
People are environmentally aware, and everything is on www now, really. That's how people find us. When we were out...
Meaning the internet, basically.
Yeah.
It's the internet is what...
Yeah. Word of mouth. We don't actually do any kind of advertising at all. We might have benefited from having done that, but we've always been too busy dealing with what's on our plate, really. It's slowed right down since COVID time. Well, it's not the COVID that slowed it down. It's the move. We were out there on the main road. We had a frontage on the main road, and our wears and tears were out on the main road. 96,000 people a day going past there on the tunnel approach.
On the Blackwall Tunnel.
Yeah.
So you're talking about carved wood, which I remember on that road.
Yeah.
So every time you drove past it, there'd be carved animals on the side of the road.
Yeah.
That was your shop front.
That was our shop front, yeah, and it was amazing the amount of times that someone would come in and go, oh, you wouldn't believe the amount of times that I've come past here and thought I must come in. So I've returned today, and I brought my wife and I brought my family to come and see the stuff that you do, because it looks really interesting. That was fantastic frontage to have out there, but the council sold the land there 5 years ago, just before the beginning of COVID. For development, which was meant to be happening within months 5 years ago, but because of the COVID, it never happened. Everything died a death as far as development is concerned. So now we're up a side turning where no one sees us.
Tell me about this area for people listening who will not know where we are or what's around here. What kind of area is this in London?
Well, it's a strange kind of an area. It's got a history. Like round there where them new buildings are going on, that used to be a bus garage, and before it was a bus garage, it was a tram shed. It wasn't just a tram shed; it was the first tram shed in London. That was it. That building there. There's an old building over there called Bromley Hall, and that Bromley Hall used to be a Catholic church, and when King Henry VIII in the court round the corner took the first church off the Catholic church, it was this one here that he came down with his soldiers and threw the priest out.
That's interesting.
And told his army to then go and kill the priests all over the rest of the country.
So that was the start of the Reformation.
That was here.
Happened
That
right
was
here in this
Bromley
area.
Hall Road, leading to Bromley Hall, and that road down the bottom there is called Bromley Hall. So as well as being a deprived area, it's got loads of history as well. You know, that's just touching on the history that's here.
And the people who live in this area, is this a mixed social area? Do you get rich people, poor people, and everyone in between?
Very mixed. Very, very, very mixed. But probably more Bengali people live around here than anything else. When I smell the curry cooking, I say to people, this is typical East London food that's cooking now. So I'd say there's a large Bengali community around here, and if you were to ask anybody, they would say that they're very poor and deprived people that are around here. They exist among the people that are here, but if you were to see some of the cars parked outside the door, you'd say there's some very wealthy people here as well, because some of the cars that are outside the door are £100,000 cars. So it's again, that's mixed, same as the people, it's mixed.
It's also interesting how people categorise themselves or how we think of ourselves. You know, if someone said to you, describe yourself socially, we're all quite complicated. Are you someone who, given what you've said to me about being on protest camps, living in squats, being involved in community projects, are you someone who does not like to be categorised? It would be...
I'm an Irish Cockney that just looks like a leprechaun.
That start in Ireland, why did you end up here in East London if you started your life in Ireland?
I was 10 years old and I came with my family, my parents, when they moved to here. My dad was a carpenter and my mum worked in social care, and they worked hard, done good for themselves, looked after all of us the best they could, which was pretty damn good. We had big circles of friends that used to come to our house every day and eat food off of our communal table. So I suppose that was the basis of who and what I am, was how I grew up, really, you know, in them kind of surroundings.
And that's the life that your parents created around themselves. It was open doors.
Oh God, yeah, open doors, definitely, yeah. I remember one morning I was still living at my mum and dad's, coming down to go to school, I think, and there was a strange person sitting at the table having breakfast with my mum and dad. And when I asked who this was, my dad said, well, when I went to go in the car this morning, this woman was in the car. I don't know where she is or where she come from, but she's obviously homeless and made her way into my car overnight. And there she was sitting at the table having breakfast with them. And I remember when friends in my late teen years that might get kicked out of home for whatever reason, would be sleeping in an old van out the front, and I'd say to my dad, can they come in and sleep on my bedroom floor? I'd be responsible for them, and he'd say no. And I was like, oh my God, no. And then I couldn't talk to him because he'd said no. He said, no, he said, if you leave them, he said, give them something like that. He said, they will become weak and they will always expect that. He said, whereas if you're strong with them and tell them no and they have to deal with things themselves, they will do better for themselves. Well, there was 3 friends one time sleeping in an old Anglia van out the front with a bale of hay that had been broken up to keep them warm inside the van. Within a week, they'd all found places to live and all done well for themselves in life.
It's an interesting distinction there, because you talk about your dad and your mum bringing in the homeless woman for breakfast. But at the same time, he had kind of like ideas about who did or who did not need succour. Do you see a contradiction there, or does it make sense to you?
Well, it made sense to him because he'd give examples. You know, that day was that conversation. The next day he would say, I was working on the building site and there was lads there working on the building site and they had a great time over the weekend. They won £1,000 on the horses. This is a time when everybody was earning 70 quid a week, and they won thousands of pounds over the weekend on the horses. And like a week later, they're trying to borrow a couple of shillings at work because the thousands of pounds is gone, you know, and you kind of have to say no to people to make them strong. He's absolutely right in what he says, but it doesn't mean it didn't hurt when he said no, because I would have, with that kind, compassionate side to me, I would have allowed him to come in. I must just go to this.
Go, get that delivery driver. Can I just go back to your parents? Is the world that you grew up in still in existence, or is it in the past and that kind of East London doesn't exist anymore?
I remember the first time I came to East London, I was 13 maybe, and I came with a school friend from where I'd lived in Bexley Heath over in Kent. And they had relations over here, and when we come over here, it was here local somewhere, we went to a house and there was piano playing and you could hear other musical instruments playing. Look up the road and there's a pub up there and you could hear music coming out of that. Walk up to the pub and there was people from the party and the family that were in there, they all knew each other, and then there's another house over there having a party, and they all knew each other, and then there's another pub just round the corner, and they all knew each other, and it was all nice and friendly. And I thought, this is like home. This is fantastic, like this, because we didn't have that in Bexley Heath where my parents had moved to.
So you weren't here, you were in Bexley Heath?
It was in Bexley Heath,
which is in South London.
Which is a more conservative, middle class kind of an area with a different attitude altogether.
So as a 13-year-old, you warmed to it and you were like, this feels nice.
Yeah, this is like home. This is like being among the people that I come from over in Ireland. So it felt very similar.
Is it still like that?
No. People live in fear now, Oh my God, it's like, nothing is safe anymore. It's amazing the amount of stuff that gets stolen. You just can't have nothing. You can't have nothing in the garden. You can't have nothing outside the door. And it's totally changed. Whereas one time, you could have every door open. And you could wander in and out of people's houses, as my friends did when I lived in Bexley Heath. They could wander in and out of my house, of my parents' house, and it was very unusual for them. They hadn't experienced that before. But that was still here in East London. That was still the same here in East London.
And the change is it? Can you explain the change?
People don't help each other no more. There was a time if you broke down, someone would stop and help you. They'd get a pump your tyre up. They'd get a rope out and pull you along the road. People helped each other. Nowadays, not a chance. People don't help each other no more. And they've got to get back to that, because that is really where it's at. When people, there's more joy in giving than there is in taking, but people don't experience that joy. I don't know how much of the taking they do, but I don't see any of the giving going on anymore. It just doesn't happen in the way it used to.
So, given your understanding of that change, does your work with this business and the way you run it and the people you work with, do you try and somehow build some of that trust, some of that giving, some of that joy into what you do as a kind of like an island of, this is the way we should be?
Yeah, there was a little bit of land down there just outside the gate that was full of tyres and plastic bumpers and general waste from car braking, lorry braking, all that kind of thing. Cleared all of that off, and then let the local community, but we only let people come on it and work on it that have got illnesses of some kind, diabetes, mental health, whatever, and then support them, like with things for making raised beds for growing, 1,000 litre water butt with the forklift down there once a week or whatever, to allow them to be able to water their wares and all that kind of thing. That's the very local kind of side to it, but we extend that out much further to things like Fordall. There's
the farm.
That's the farm, and there's another one down in Wales that I was at there a couple of weeks ago. I extend it outwards. Like here locally, we've done a lot of work with old people's homes, schools, community projects, and all. And there's loads and loads and loads and loads more to do, but it's not about you doing it all the time.
I was going to say, you can't generate it all on your own, because if you stop doing it, it stops. So you've got to somehow kind of engender a group think in what you're doing, otherwise it doesn't last.
Yeah. The Great Ormond Street, there's a guy working there now called Nick Martin, and he's the recycling officer. He was the guy that came to me here one day and said, will you work with me doing environmental stuff in old people's homes, where we get the schools and the old people's homes working together. When we went along to do that, I brought the special needs learning difficulties. That was the third element. That was incredible enjoyment by all involved, by us going along with the special needs learning difficulties. It was incredible.
With the special needs young people, do they get involved with the wood making, with the creating, with the artistic side? How have they got involved?
When we go out on site, they take the lead. They tell the school kids what it is that they needed doing. They tell the old people why we're doing it like this and what it's going to mean. And they became very knowledgeable. and loved being involved, loved being up front.
Do you hanker after the countryside, the countryside life that you grew up with as a kid, or are you content to be in the city?
Both. The city's great because you go around the corner and you got Lidl's. You go around the next corner, you got every kind of food that you can imagine from everywhere around the world. But if you get on with your local community, you've got all of them foods anyway, because the local people around here love to give me food. So I experience food from all over the world just by getting on with people.
It's kind of continuing that thing that your parents did, open doors.
Yeah. You know, the Asian and the Irish communities are not too different.
Can you expand that a bit more for our listeners who are unfamiliar with either?
They help each other.
They could not build paddy field in Asia. This is why we kicked them.
Hold on, Suraiya, let me just come in.
Danny said Irish and Asian community is not much different. So they went to Asia to build paddy field. They could not build it properly, so we kicked them from Asia. That is something to say.
Did you hear what Suraiya said?
Yeah, I used to wander up and saying that we've had an impact on you years ago. You know, when we were there building the paddy fields, that's what they call the paddy fields, because before we came here and built the roads, the canals, and the buildings and everything else, we'd done the paddy fields for you. So she comes back with answers like you just heard. It's a bit of humour that goes on, and although everything about an Asian way of life, religion, and all the rest of it, when it comes to family ways and being kind to each other and being helpful to each other and sharing food with each other, there's not a lot of difference at all.
If I was going to ask you to answer the question, this I know, this I have learnt in life, what would you say?
There is so much to learn that I'm not able to answer that yet. You know, a day that you don't learn something is a day wasted. You know, when I was 15, 16, 17, I knew everything.
As we all do at that age.
Yeah, exactly. But by the time I was 45, 35, I realised that I knew nothing. You got to be open-minded. You got to be prepared to talk to people, and you got to be prepared to listen. But what's the big major thing that I've learned? God, there's so much. Don't know how I could answer that in one sentence, to be honest with you.
He learned properly how to build paddy field.
I missed that. What did
She's
Suraiya
still
just say?
going on about me learning properly how to build paddy fields.
And the future for you and Suraiya as business partners, the future for this place here, what we're looking at, what does it look like?
Well, the future's going to be there's going to be 1,000 flats built over there.
And you're pointing just across the road.
Yeah. There's 133 flats at the end, and just behind the back over there, there's the 750 getting built. Where's the hospitals? Where's the schools? Where's the local shops? Where's the infrastructure? Where's the playgrounds? It's all right building all these flats. What's the future? As far away from here as I can possibly be. Fordhall, the Forest School down in Wales. I've got some very good friends up in Scotland.
So you're talking about not being on this site where we are now.
Oh, no chance. No chance.
And that's not your choice, or that is your choice.
I've got no say in that whatsoever. You know, there's millions and millions being spent here. That company over there that own that, they were ordered in a court in Singapore to liquidate, owing 360 billion as being the biggest developers on the planet, a Chinese consortium. What do I want to be around that for?
So all of the new flats that are going to come around here is basically going to crowd you out, move you out. You're going to have to move. This shed with all its wood.
Yeah, it's just thousands and thousands of new flats and people. There's nobody's got any interest in wood recycling in that environment. places to work for the working people, they've all been pushed out 20 miles. You have to go out past the M25 now in order to find anywhere to work. That's not a good way of servicing the local areas of the things that they need.
And is this business going to close?
So I'd like to carry on. If she does find somewhere else, or we find somewhere else to re-establish, I will help to re-establish it. But once this is gone, that's me. I'm done. I'm off to give time at the likes of Fordhall Farm, the likes of the Forest Farm down in Wales, my good friends in Scotland that are doing incredible stuff to do with hydro schemes and that in Scotland.
So another phase of life will start for you.
Yeah, I've given my all here. I've me and the dog, haven't got far beyond the gate here for a lot of times.
This is a very large black dog who's been slouching around. Can I use that expression?
Yeah,
slouching
absolutely,
around the shed.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's asleep out on the road now, enjoying the warm tarmac.
Yep.
So you're going to pack your bags and head off.
I've got to head out there and fall asleep on the tarmac with him.